There was a time in the early 1990s where the New England Patriots almost moved to St. Louis, and they wouldn't have even been called the St. Louis Patriots. They would have been called the St. Louis Stallions. This is just some fun NFL history when it comes to relocation. The story of the New England Patriots with their old stadium, possibly looking at moving to St. Louis. Now, a St. Louis native bought the Patriots in 1992 with the intent of moving the team to St. Louis, where the Patriots would have become the Stallions. The wheels were already in motion for the change to be made, but there was a problem. The Patriots had a lease at the old Foxborough Stadium that ran through 2001. So they wanted to move in 92 with the St. Louis native owning the Patriots, but the lease was for 9 more years. And the owner of the stadium, who was Robert Kraft, refused to let the Patriots out, with the stadium lease hindering a potential move to St. Louis. The team was sold to Robert Kraft, and that is how the New England Patriots remained in the area. There's also the idea on if St. Louis would have gotten the Patriots and rebranded them to the Stallions, the NFL would have given another expansion team to Boston. So maybe you could have had an NFL team in Boston rather than New England, depending on the situation. When it comes to the stadiums, you can see old Foxborough Stadium, really decrepit, really bad. It lasted about 31 years. Very similar in terms of its lifespan to a multi-purpose stadium where it's about 3 decades. But yeah, there was nothing special at all with Foxborough Stadium. It was a bottom tier NFL stadium, and they needed a new one, and they got the new Gillette Stadium. And it is kind of interesting, the new Gillette Stadium undergoing several renovations recently. I've always thought it's kind of it's a solid stadium. It's certainly hosted a ton of great playoff games. They're put up the brand new lighthouse now. Those are the recent renovations. Certainly Gillette Stadium, I wouldn't consider it legendary, but again, it's hosted so many different playoff games. St. Louis did end up getting a team a year later, luring the Rams from LA, and they held that team until 2016. Very short stint of NFL football being played in St. Louis, and there was really not much of a chance for St. Louis outside of, the greatest show on turf. After that whole thing was over, you're left with the Edwards-Jones Dome, which, by the way, is still kicking as a dome that's used for various events, but that thing was just simply not even close to good enough. They had an entire plan. It's actually called National Car Rental Field. They even had a name for the stadium, around a $1 billion outdoor stadium right along the river. Looks very similar to Lincoln Financial Field. It ended up not happening, and St. Louis ended up actually suing because of their removal of an NFL franchise from the St. Louis area. Now, would have St. Louis been a good spot for the Patriots, the Stallions? Is there an alternate history? It's just kind of like the same idea of the Cleveland Browns moving or relocating to Baltimore and like all their players going to Baltimore, and we've seen how successful the Ravens have been. Would the Browns possibly be in a similar situation because they would have had all of the coaches at the time? Possibly a more successful franchise. Would St. Louis be significantly more successful if they had become the St. Louis Stallions, gotten the Patriots from New England, if that lease did not exist until 2001, which hindered them from moving, and they end up getting the Rams instead of the Patriots, which really changes things. It's kind of like an alternate history. I'm not saying they would have been this super successful franchise, but them getting the Rams, subsequently becoming horrible after the Kurt Warner years and playing in that decrepit dome did not help. St. Louis is known for being a really good baseball town, but when it comes to their football stadium, I just don't think St. Louis really was given a proper chance because you're playing in a horrible dome. Obviously, you need a new stadium to really, when it comes to NFL, it is very easy to sell out stadiums though. So either way, that is kind of the story. Let's be honest, the NFL, they wanted a team in LA really bad. And now they don't have one team, they've got 2 teams, and they've got a team in Vegas. It kind of seemed crazy that the NFL didn't have a team in LA throughout the early 2000s, just considering how big of a market it is, and they certainly self-corrected by putting 2 teams there. And there also is the question about San Diego. Do I think San Diego can get an NFL team? I just don't see it. Because now San Diego's another one. They really weren't given much of a chance. Normally, you would like to see a brand new stadium be put up. We understand Petco Park, the sellouts that they've had. They just had a crazy attendance year. Could San Diego work for an NFL team? I mean, I would say absolutely it could work with the beautiful weather and everything and a beautiful new stadium. Would they potentially be an expansion option? I think the NFL would consider there, but right now, when it comes to expansion, it seems very far away. And a lot of people seem to be very intrigued about the idea of the NFL creating a European division, with possibly 4 teams, although I'm not exactly sure how that would work. You would expand by 4 teams and they'd all be in, Europe. It just seems pretty ridiculous, although there is the rumor that the NFL wants to have a Super Bowl over possibly in London, where it would start at around 3:30 Eastern time, 12:30 Pacific, and it would be, I think, either 8:30 or 9:30 local London time. But that's just me kind of going on a tangent. Getting back to the whole idea, when it comes to relocation, it is certainly interesting, and it is interesting to see all of these stadiums and how it all plays out, but a single lease is what kept St. Louis from getting the original New England Patriots franchise, and if a relocation had happened, we could have seen Boston, the city of Boston, not New England, get a relocation team. Also, possibly Baltimore getting a team where Cleveland would have kept the Browns at that point if Baltimore would have gotten a relocation team, but all of that is hypothetical. And here is the original 1960s proposed Boston Dome, the multi-purpose Dome of Death. This would have killed Fenway Park. Can you believe that? Imagine if they were... I mean, honestly, when you think about it, some of the other historic MLB stadiums that were, demolished because of multi-purpose stadiums, it would fit right in. But this would have been football, baseball, and you would have had an NBA arena right next to it. And at this point, being built in 1964, this thing probably would have been demolished in 95 or 96. That's just the reality of multi-purpose dome stadiums. But there is that idea, possibly bringing the Patriots to the Boston area with a dome like that. Of course, it never happened. You do have Foxborough Stadium, and then you now have Gillette Stadium. And I would expect Gillette Stadium to last at least another 20 years, considering the recent investment they made into it with the renovations to both the exterior and the interior. When it comes to the Edwards-Jones Dome, now it's called like the Stadium at America Center, or you know what, it's called the Dome at America Center because of its location right in the center of the United States. I don't think it's going to be nearly as lucky at this point. It's hanging on by a thread. It does host a few neutral site, low-level college football games and maybe some XFL games. I believe it's the home of an XFL team. Overall, I would give it an extended lifespan, probably about another 10 years. And then it'll be demolished. There was the idea possibly to renovate this stadium if the Rams would have stayed local. It was just never realistic. They were going to try and install these panel windows going around the side to let natural light into it. But when you look at the interior of the stadium, even if you added the natural light, it's such an outdated design with the giant upper deck going all the way around. It's like a blimp-type stadium, exactly like the Metrodome. Except it's even worse than the Metrodome because at least the Metrodome innovated and was able, with that blimp-type roof, to allow for natural light. This stadium has a very solid roof to where you're not going to ever get that natural light feel to it. But guys, that is just the story, the hypothetical of the New England Patriots possibly moving to St. Louis, rebranding to the Stallions, and then when the NFL expands, possibly Boston, not New England, getting an expansion team, and then the Browns staying in Cleveland and Baltimore getting an expansion team. There's a lot of different hypotheticals we can think about. And then one other thing I wanted to mention, I don't think this is true, but it is an interesting theory. If you look at the color of the seats in the Edwards-Jones Dome, people were saying that they were supposed to match the New England Patriots, or at that point it would be the St. Louis Stallions, the rebrand. That was the idea that, it's the Patriots colors, they were going to get them. But again, it doesn't really make sense to me considering they were going to rebrand the New England Patriots, change their colors, and put in some type of, purplish color with the Stallions. At least that's what it looks like from the original helmets they had of them. when you look at the Edwards Jones Dome, you can see it does look like, they have Patriot colors in there. And if you look at the timeline, the Edwards Jones Dome originally broke ground in 92 and it opened in 1995, so it was under construction while this entire thing was going on. So maybe the seating color scheme was related to possibly bringing in the Patriots from New England in a relocation process. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.